All right. I find I have to actually concentrate. I can't do more than one thing at a time. So as much as I want to.
Since it's live now, it's great.
Yeah, it's going now.
Actually,
I gotta shut that. All right, cool. So, and then, the first time I did the live thing, I forgot to start my recorder. So I'm not going to make that mistake now. So now that's going to.
Awesome.
So Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Man, I just want to start by telling you how grateful I am for all of the transparency that you have in what's going on in your life and the way you put yourself out in the world. I've been a huge fan of as I was telling you before, of your newsletter. In fact, I started a newsletter. I was basically inspired by your newsletter to start my own. And I just love how you do what you do.
Oh, thank you.
So I really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here, and it's great to hear from people that are into the newsletter and like it. I only publish once a month, so I try not to do it over. I don't want people to have like a stack of email and add more anxiety to their life. So hopefully the right frequency, and it seems to be working well so far.
Well, I've copied that exactly from you.
You're just doing once a month. Well, it makes it easier too, right? It's less work to do.
It's an amazing amount of, you have to really focus. I thought once a month would be relatively easy, and it's easy in the sense it's only once a month, but it's not easy to, you have to actually think, and you have to actually write well, and you have to actually proofread, and there are logistics to doing it.
Especially at the end of the month, it's just like, it seems like it's never a good time, right? There's like all these things come together at once, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, like I have to publish this in a day. And then
I'm really glad to hear that's not just me. That's exactly what happens to me. All month long, I keep thinking, okay, just prepare. And I take notes, and, I write down links to things.
Yeah, same.
But it's never convenient, In fact, my July newsletter, I was very grateful that July 1st was on Sunday, so that I had kind of an extra day.
Right.
I could have put it out on Sunday, but I figured that's kind of, I don't know if anybody's going to open it on a Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. I always avoid the weekends as well.
So that was a nice surprise. But, I invited you on because, you're engaged in the sort of experimentation and trial by play, around the things that we do via the Whole Life Challenge. Various ways to improve your health, your well-being, the way you engage with the rest of the world. And you do it in a very, I just like the way you go about it. And I wanted to ask you to start with, how did that come about? Like, have you always just wanted to find a better way to be more healthy or be more, more productive in your life? Like, where did that come from?
It's a good question. I'm trying to think back when, I guess I've always been intrigued by ways to optimize. And I think that later in life, it's been for a couple different reasons. One is that I've figured out that I don't want to be living the startup life. I don't want to be working, 80-hour weeks. I want to really find and balance in my life. And that means that when I am working, I am very engaged and very deliberate about what I do. And so when I try to go heads down and get into the projects that I'm working on, it has to be, in a way that's very productive, and I see results in a short amount of time. But then when, it comes time for me to stop, I also want to be able to completely check out of that mode and go into a mode of not having to think about work at night or not having to check my email at night, and just really live a more balanced and fulfilled life that way. And I think that applies to not only work and productivity, but also to health as well. And so for me, it's about figuring out what are the things that I can do to optimize my body so that I can just live a life that is, free of disease as much as it can be, that as I age, my body still works and functions, and I'm able to do the things that I want to do, especially because I have a little rambunctious 8-month-old right now. So just knowing that I started that part of my life a little bit later means that I want to be around for a long time. So, just picking and choosing when to kind of not obey those rules, I think is also very important. So it's about, for me, it's really about trying to optimize diet, exercise, and sleep. Those and balance too. And I would put that in the kind of more meditation camp. So those are the main things that I work on.
Did you come to this because of a problem, like some things got out of control or your health took a nosedive, or some major event occurred that you're like, I can't keep doing this?
Yeah, I think that there's a few things. One, I was working in Silicon Valley for a very long time in the startup world. And so I was putting in a lot of really long hours and very startup life type lifestyle. And so that means that in my earlier, kind of when I first moved out to the Bay Area, it was, I had spent a lot of my kind of adolescence and early 20s in this idea of, pizza and soda and things like that were very like, energy drinks, things like that was very short-term gratification kind of focused. Mm-hmm. And I was realizing that certain things were starting to happen to my body. Like I was getting like weird heart palpitations that were happening. I was having trouble sleeping at times. I was always kind of ruminating and thinking about work, and it would just like never allow me to fully relax or fully disconnect. And then I started getting into more kind of like monitoring certain biomarkers that were important to me in terms of inflammation, and also getting into figuring out my glucose levels, and they were slightly elevated, and I had a hard time clearing out glucose, so it would stay elevated for a longer period of time than it should, which are kind of like early signs of kind of being pre-diabetic. My dad was diabetic. So my father had heart disease and died of a heart attack, and there's a lot of that on my side of the family. So really getting in, looking at my cholesterol numbers and just seeing that they were out of control. So a lot of things just pointed to, okay, you're a grown up now. Now's the time to really start taking this stuff seriously and get in front of it so that it doesn't, something bad doesn't happen.
How old were you when this shift started occurring? I'm sure it was one moment, but.
Well, honestly, I made one really conscious decision that was amazing that I actually did it at the time, because I don't know why I really did it, but I was turning, it was the year 2000, a long time ago, and it was New Year's Eve, and everyone had their New Year's resolutions, like what were they giving up, and I didn't smoke or anything like that. So I just thought, like, man, I just chug sodas all day long. I need to get off of soda. And so I stopped drinking soda that year, and I still haven't had a soda since then.
Wow.
But it was hard.
Were you drinking diet sodas or regular?
No, I was drinking just like sugar soda. Yeah, diet soda actually gave me headaches from the aspartame and stuff that's in there.
Yeah, right.
So I just I gave that up, and immediately I went to like more sugar related drinks like orange juice and juices and things like that are still not good for you at all.
Yeah, right.
It's just so much sugar. And but that was a way for me to eventually get into tea and kind of get out of that and start drinking tea as my substitute. And that's what led me down the path of really getting into tea, and then eventually kind of taking it really seriously and becoming a certified tea master and traveling all around the world to study tea. And so that was a fun, like I would say pretty much all of my 20s I spent doing a lot of that. But it wasn't until my 30s that I started getting into more of the paying attention to cholesterol and different biomarkers.
It's funny, you and I have the soda thing in common. I used to be sponsored by Red Bull, and so I had a never-ending stream of Red Bull whenever I wanted. I was the life of the party. I'd show up and I'd have 4 cases of Red Bull on my shoulders, and I had a Red Bull fridge in my house, and then I used to take it to the office, and it was Red Bull and Diet Coke and Diet Dr. Pepper.
Oh man.
And I was a professional athlete, so I could get away with it. Like that was the positive and yet negative thing about being super fit and super active is I could basically eat or drink whatever I wanted, and
Right.
everything would still work.
Yeah.
And boy, I remember when I first stopped. Well, it was the first whole life challenge. It was I didn't really even want to do it. The first version of the whole challenge, and I just made it my mission to get off any of the sodas, and that was in 2011. And I bought a Soda Stream, threw away all the syrups, and just had bubbly water. And I have never had a soda since. And
Yeah. I love sparkling water. Sparkling water is a great way to kind of get that sensation of the fizziness in the soda without having, the actual bad stuff.
Yeah, right. Well, so when you got into the biomarker game, how did you know what to do? Did you have relationships with people that you already could turn to tell you where to start? It's not, I mean, I think a lot of people in the world are not that yet, even though I've known about it for years. I think people are just starting to wake up to the fact that you can actually do this stuff. How did you come about taking that step?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first thing that I wanted to do, well, one is this idea of kind of like body hacking or this whole world of nootropics and supplementation to improve certain things has started to really connect and blow up online. And so there's a handful of people that had podcasts about this stuff. Tim Ferriss, a great buddy of mine, was really into the stuff when he was writing his books. And so I was watching all the crazy experiments that he was doing to himself and all the different blood draws. And I would just ask him a lot of questions about what he was doing and why. And so I was kind of learning off of Tim. And then Tim introduced me to Dr. Peter Attia, who's a really well-known podcaster and doctor in this kind of longevity space. And so I started working with him. Dr. Rhonda Patrick is another one that I learned a lot from, especially when it comes to genetic polymorphisms and the things that you can do with your 23andMe data to really look at how your genes influence a lot of these different markers. And so it was it's just a lot of reading and a lot of listening to these different podcasts and kind of like hearing about something and be like, okay, I understand that if I have my 23andMe data, I can export that and I can bring it into these tools. And so Rhonda created this tool on Found My Fitness that allows you to tie in your account, and then it spits out a custom report for you based on your genetic profile and tells you where you may be deficient in certain things. And it's custom tailored to you. And I was like, well, that's awesome. And it's backed by real solid science. And these are actual scientists doing the research. And so that's the other thing too, I think that's really important is so many people these days, they listen to doctors online. And I feel like the majority of doctors just are either 5 or 10 years behind the curve, or they're just, they're not really trained scientists. They don't really understand how to interpret the data or run these experiments. And so for me, I've always stayed away from doctor recommendations. And I've always gone directly to where the real data is being created, and that is by the scientists. Yep. And so working with doctors that actually work with scientists or the scientists themselves is for me, has been the only way to go. And then it's just like doing a full panel of blood work and looking and understanding these different markers and saying, okay, I'm out of range here. What does that mean? Like if my C-reactive protein is high, what does that mean? If my homocysteine levels are high, how do I address that with B vitamins? And oh, wait a second, I have a polymorphism that's in THFR that means that I am a bad methylator. How do I go in and take a methylated B vitamin that will then lower my homocysteine levels, which lowers my potential risk for cardiovascular disease? So it's like just like really understanding these things and following these kind of like who I would consider to be these just really thoughtful, awesome resources online and learning as you go.
Well, I mean, that all sounds, I mean, it sounds, I get it. I totally get it. I mean, I'm in the business of doing this. You know more about it than I do at this point, for sure, because you lost me halfway through polymorphism, which is fine. But I would bet that most people are not going to absorb the kinds of relational capacity that's needed to interpret the results of tests the way you have. How do you guide people? Like if you were giving advice to your mom or dad or your sister who doesn't have either the capability or the desire to actually dig in like you've dug in, how do you guide them? What advice do you give them?
Yeah, well, I would say first, I think there's one thing there's two things you need to do. One is go get your 23andMe done and get that test complete. And it's not 23andMe that's going to give you the insights to your data, because they very much make it super commercial and super like, this is your ancestors and this is where you came from. And that's all great. I mean, it's fun to know that kind of stuff, but that's not really health related insights. But the thing you have to understand with spitting in that tube and doing the 23andMe is they go and they have a chip and they scan your saliva and they look at a whole subset of your genes. And they give you that as raw data. So you can download that directly from 23andMe. And so you'll download a compressed file. And inside that text file is all of your genes. And it shows you, you can then take that data and take it to different tools to analyze it and tell you really what's going on. So that's one thing I would tell them to do. And I have done that with a bunch of family. And the second thing is just to work with a provider, most likely a doctor, or I've also used...
I don't want to forget this, but
yeah.
What do you do with that data? Because you got the text file now, but hell, if I'm going to go in and read a text file, I know you already said Dr. Going to Dr.
Ron Patrick's, yeah. So basically what happens is after you complete your 23andMe and it's all done, right? You'll have a login for 23andMe. Yeah. And that login, almost like the way that you log in with Facebook on other websites where you can authorize and say, yes, I agree to use my Facebook login for this website, even though it's not Facebook. Mm-hmm. Ron Patrick's site has a login where you can go and authorize your 23andMe data. So you're saying, I'm willing to share this 23andMe data with this genetic tool to analyze my data. So her website is foundmyfitness.com. And at the center of the site, it says run the comprehensive DNA report. And if you click on that, it'll ask you to tie in, and this is completely free. She's an awesome scientist that is funded by the community of supporters that she has. And so she doesn't charge for any of this stuff, which is how you know it's good.
Wow. Right.
And you click on that and it'll authorize in your 23andMe. And then it takes a couple minutes and they go through and they look at each gene that you have and see if there's any abnormalities. And these are, they call them the SNPs, SNPs, these single nucleotide polymorphisms, which are little changes in the DNA that can make you more susceptible to certain things. So as I was mentioning before, I unfortunately have one of the bad ones that's called MTHFR, which means that I am a really bad absorber of B vitamins in general. So I will need to supplement with B vitamins. And so here's the interesting thing. I saw that and the report says it spells it out very clearly, MTHFR. I'm like, oh crap, that kind of sucks, but a lot of people have this. So what do I do? And then what I did is I did this full blood panel. And when I got the full blood panel back, and I use a service called wellnesseffects.com. And I got the full blood panel back, and it's nice because you don't have to go in and see a physical doctor. They just give you a form and you go to the blood center and then you get your results back online. And I noticed, like, this is a real world example, my homocysteine levels were elevated. And it says, you know, it's very clear that it's in the red, right? So you go and look at that and you're like, oh, what is this? Okay, homocysteine, and it spells it out very clearly. When it's elevated, is linked to higher cardiovascular risk and all these different things. And it turns out that people that don't absorb B vitamins have elevated homocysteine. So you draw those two connections,
right?
And then you say, okay, I get it. I have this issue with my genes. I see that it's confirmed in the blood work. So I know that these are two truths, and I can go and now supplement with B vitamins, and then I'll go rerun my blood work. So, you know, 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later, I'm like, okay, I've been taking this Amazon purchased like multi-B that people say on the forums that it's good for reducing homocysteine. And now I go get it rechecked, and sure enough, it drops down 5 points. I'm in a normal range. And I'm like, wow, I learned something there. That's awesome. And so that's just one example of probably, you know, 100 different things that she checks for and presents back to you in that.
Right, right. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And you don't have to go back and do the 23andMe because it's genetic.
Right, exactly. So that's locked in, that's set.
Yeah, right.
But you learn a lot of different things. Like, for example, there's certain polymorphisms that if you have, you are at a greater risk for Alzheimer's disease and cardiovascular events. And there's just a lot of, it's such a new, exciting field.
Yep.
Like this idea that we would look at our genes and be able to see what we're kind of predisposed for. But that's not your destiny, but it's good to know, right? Because if you know, like, oh, hey, there's a higher likelihood that I could, like, for example, I have one that is related to people that have poor eyesight later in life. And, you can be like, oh, well, I can increase my, let's just say, vitamin A levels now, not crazy amounts, but just enough to make sure I'm getting the right amount. So that can hopefully, extend that out for a longer period of time. So it's those little insights that you're just like, okay, cool. Well, I'll address those now versus waiting for them to happen to me.
Yeah, right. I think I did do 23andMe. I have not taken the next step with it, but I think they do address a tiny smidgen of what you're talking about with cancer. They have a whole section. They test for like 3 things or 4 things, and they explain that these are 4 of probably 100 that are possible, and they give you all these warnings. Look, this doesn't mean you're going to get cancer. It doesn't mean you're not going to get cancer, but do you even want to know? I mean, that's one of the big questions that they have on their site, is you have to actually give permission to actually find out.
If it's a serious condition, like there's this one that's I think it's the ApoE34, that if you have this polymorphism, it's a really dramatic increase in your risk for Alzheimer's disease. Yikes. It's something like, I don't know, I don't want to misquote it, but it's like something like 60%, or it's a scary number where, like, if you have this, there's a good chance later in life you might get it. But like for me, I was like, yes, opt in. I want to know this.
Yeah.
Because like there's certain things that we can do that have been shown to kind of like, like low dose lithium, for example, or even better deep sleep. Certain things that we can do and address now via things like an Aura ring, or you name it, that will hopefully help us get around this, or at least wait it out until there's a cure or something better.
I don't want to, I just wrote down a note because I want to talk to you about deep sleep, but I've been an Aura ring user for years. I'm still waiting for my new one.
Oh, you got to get the new one.
It's been on order since December. I'm waiting, waiting. Like I decided about 3 weeks ago, I'm not going to be neurotic about checking my email first thing in the morning for the Aura ring order that's suddenly coming. It's just going to come when it comes.
Yeah.
But God dang, it's like,
well, they're shipping now.
I know they're shipping. We bought one for each person on our team back in January as their holiday gift.
That's awesome.
But they're waiting. So, but you were going to mention the second thing that, I interrupted your thought about the advice you'd give to somebody to learn more about this without necessarily knowing as much as you do. The first was to go to Dr. Patrick's site, get 23andMe, but the second was you were starting to say go to a provider, or.
Oh, I think I was just going to say that, you get your DNA data, but you always need the blood work to back it up, because the blood work was going to tell you, just because you have these, like you mentioned earlier about the cancer risk and things like that, just because you have these SNPs, these polymorphisms, doesn't mean that they're actually turned on, or there's a lot of other things that could come into play there. So you need to, the blood work is like a drawing the line between the two. So you need a provider that is willing to not, like, the issue that most providers have is you go in to see your doctor and you're like, hey, I want a blood panel done. And they come back and they give you 15 things, right? And if you look at you don't have to use Wellness Effects, and I have no affiliation with them, but if you look at what the full screen that they do, they're doing like 5 different markers of inflammation. They're doing your insulin levels, your fasting glucose. Like, they're doing a bunch of stuff that you should just make sure is included in the work that you get done. So when you go get pricked, you might as well give 5 tubes or 7 tubes and get it all done at once.
Yeah, right.
So you just want to make sure you get all of that, and then just store it and have it as your baseline. I drop it into a Google spreadsheet, and so it's just there. And then every time I get blood work done, I can just have it, and then you can trend it out over time.
Right. It's I find the interpretation of that is important, and figuring out who to help you interpret that. I mean, certainly you can learn it yourself, but it's a lot to learn. So what do you do? What do you tell people that need help with that?
Well, I think that it depends on what's going on. Like, for me, and this is not medical advice, but I'll just tell you what I do personally. Like, for me, if it's something where it's a complex system that I don't understand, let's say it's a thyroid issue,
Yeah.
I'm not going to try and figure that out on my own. Like, there's no way. I would go to a professional and have them help interpret the results for me. Same thing with cholesterol and things of that nature. But if it's something like an inflammation marker or something that is just like a little bit elevated, it's not scary, but it's something I want to get under control, then I will go and do a lot more personal research. When I know there's not a direct, like the doctor's going to be like, yeah, it's elevated, not sure what to do. Like, that's when I go, and once the doctor says, I have no concern, you're not going to die, you don't have something serious wrong with you, but it is elevated, that's when I kind of turn to the more like, let's figure this out on my own and start doing the research.
Right. What I want to get back to the deep sleep thing. It's funny. I struggle with my deep sleep. My Oura ring tells me basically I get maybe I would say on average I'm around 35 or 40 minutes of deep sleep a night, which is dismal compared to all my other markers.
Oh, I've been way worse than that, man. I've been nice where I think last night was horrible. So what was you want to figure out how to improve that?
What do you do? What have you done to improve your deep? I've tried cannabis. I'm not cannabis. I've tried CBD oil, and that didn't seem to work.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not out of things, but I'm just curious what you've done to.
Yeah, deep sleep is a tricky one. I'm like you where, so for example, last night, according to my Oura ring, I had 41 minutes of deep sleep, which is not where it should be. It's about halfway through the bar of what a healthy person would have. And the night before I had next to nothing. So, there's a couple things. One, I find that sauna usage before bed, like going to the sauna followed by a cold shower, really can help increase deep sleep, which is great. I just got
infrared or heat sauna, like a barrel sauna, or what?
Yeah, I have an actual standard heat sauna, not an infrared. I wanted to get to 170 degrees. That's kind of like, and I can't quite get there with infrared. So I went with a like full on kind of like barrel style sauna. So that's one thing that's really helped improve my deep sleep. And then honestly, it's a couple other things. One, no drinking. That's a huge one. Even like a glass of wine will mess me up. I had Matt Walker, who runs the Sleep Institute at Berkeley, on my podcast here not too long ago. And he was talking about just like alcohol being just the devil. And his recommendation was, if you don't want alcohol to impact your sleep, there's only one thing you can do. And he's like, that's day drink.
Don't drink alcohol. Oh, day drink?
Yeah.
Have your glass of wine with lunch?
He didn't recommend that, but he's like, listen, he's like, if you're going to drink, like let's say you're going to go out with friends for a thing, like make it like a brunch kind of thing, so it can get fully out of your system by the time you go to bed. Wow. So I guess his point is, his point, even though he didn't come out and say, because he said like no drinking.
Yeah, right.
His point is just like as early as possible, right? So. For me,
and that type of alcohol doesn't make a difference. Like you can have whiskey, you can have red wine, white wine, like it's all, it just depends on you.
And I mean, this is like an N of one, but I found that you mix sugar in the equation and it's like, it's even worse. So for me, clean spirits, just straight up, are probably best.
Yep.
And trying to do that. Like if I'm going to go out to dinner and I'm like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to have a drink with dinner. It's like, I'm not waiting until the dessert to have my drink. I'm like, okay, sit down. I'll have my one glass, get it out of the way, enjoy it, and then try.
And you'll have a straight like a whiskey on the rocks, or not the whiskeys you're drinking.
Honestly, I just like wine. I in theory I should be doing just like a straight whiskey on the rocks, or tequila or something like that.
Yep.
I just do. I like a glass of wine, and I like to pretend that the red wine's good for you.
Yeah, I get my wines from a guy named Todd Smith at Dry Farm Wines. And, he and I have been friends for a long time. And
why have I heard that name, Dry Farm Wines? Why?
He runs. It's a wine club basically, and he has a very rigid. He's a ketogenic.
Yes.
Freak.
Now I know. Daria got a case of wine from him.
He tests all his wines. He's got very stringent standards for which he will bring them into the club. He only deals with Europe. So all these wines I get are from wines I would never even know existed. And they all meet his criteria. One of the criteria is no more than a gram of wine per liter bottle of wine, which it didn't really, before meeting Todd, it never really occurred.
Wait, you said a gram of what?
Of sugar. What did I say?
You said a gram of wine per liter of wine.
Yeah, no, obviously not true. A gram of sugar per liter of wine, which, you know, I'd never even thought about the fact that in a bottle of wine, there's no nutritional information. There's no, you know, I
Right.
don't know how much sugar's in the wine. So I've one of the things I've started to do since even knowing about it is when I go out to drink or to go out to eat and I want to have a glass of wine, I'll look for a European wine just because I assume that it's, you know, better. He said he hasn't really been able to find wines in the United States that will meet his sugar criteria.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me is I wear a continuous glucose monitor just because I'm always curious about what my glucose levels are doing in kind of real time. And so I test. I always order dry wines. I'm always asking, like, give me your driest wine that you have.
Yep.
They tend to be French wines because obviously a lot of the California wines are just like overly fruity.
Yeah.
And also, to be honest, the one drink that I've noticed has the least amount of impact on my blood sugar is a dry champagne.
Wow.
Yeah. So champagne, like I can have like 2 glasses of champagne and barely budge my blood sugar.
Wow.
So the champagne are graded by brut and extra brut meaning even more dry. So if you just look for like an extra brut champagne, you're good to go.
Wow. I would never have thought of that.
It's tasty.
Yeah, right. I did a little bit of experimentation when Rob Wolf's book came out. Can't remember the name of the book, but he talks about basically every carbohydrate affects every person a little bit differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only way you can figure it out is to test. And so I went through like 2 or 3 weeks of testing, you know, at a very strict time because I didn't have a glucose monitor. And I found that, believe it or not, bread. Now, I use sprouted grain bread, you know, like Ezekiel type bread, but bread had the lowest impact of any refined carbohydrate on my blood sugar levels. I mean, less than rice, less than brown rice, less than, you know, things that I thought were not going to budge the needle at all. So that was interesting. Now, I can't really go out and get sprouted grain bread typically. So I don't know that I did a test on white bread, just plain old, you know, bread in a bread basket at a restaurant. I don't really want to know because that starts a whole addictive element for me. Yeah, I could sit down at dinner and just down the whole basket easily. I used to.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's nice about doing that one binge is then you know kind of what your max is. Like if I go out and have 3 slices of pizza, I'm like, oh, my blood sugar can get up that high. I had no idea.
Right.
Yeah, and then you can really watch how long it takes to get back down, and you're like, wow, that it's just that spike and that drop off is just insane compared to what I normally eat. And so it just gives you a good benchmark.
The continuous glucose monitor is not something that's available to many people, right? I mean, it's a prescription based. I don't even know how they decide who gets to wear it.
Yeah. So basically you can go to your doctor and the conversation to have is not that you have diabetes, because they're going to know that's not true. So you can say to them, I've been really fascinated with like trying to learn out about my glucose levels. And I hear that it's linked to a bunch of other diseases. And I just want to get a prescription for a Dexcom. Dexcom makes the best by far. There's a new one out they just came out called the G6. And all you need is the little applicator to like push it to your side and a smartphone, and this reports right back to your smartphone.
Wow.
And
it doesn't inject insulin. It's just a monitor.
Yeah, all it does is basically the G6. I mean, I'm so glad I get to tell you about this version because the G5 was hardcore. It was like a big syringe that just like went into your side. Wow. And to do that was painful. The G6 is so beautiful. It's like this little device, and you press a button and it goes like, makes a popping sound. And it shoots a needle really quickly just under the surface of your skin and leaves like this flexible wire in there. Wow. You can't feel it. It is so thin. It's like the size, it's like thinner than a strand of hair. And then it's a sticky that just like sticks on your side with like a little tiny chip on your side. And then
Does it get in the way of anything? I mean,
it's waterproof. It works in the sauna. It's totally fine.
Can you work out with it on?
Yeah, totally. And then after 10 days, you just peel it off. Like I take it off just like a Band-Aid. It's like, you just take it right off. And then you just like shoot another one on the other side of your abdomen. And
it doesn't come off in the shower. It doesn't come off in, I mean, obviously not.
It's great. You can swim with it. You can do anything. But anyway, you just tell them that you're curious. Don't write you up a prescription because you have diabetes, but just if they're a cool doctor, they'll write you up a prescription, and then you just call Dexcom. And I always just pay, because it's not covered under insurance when it's not needed. I just pay out of pocket for it. So
is it expensive?
It is pricey. I mean, it's a few $100s. I think that's like a kind of, I may have gone down in price actually, because they used to require that you had a standalone little computer with it. That was like almost like its own little smartphone next to it to read the values. But I think if you just order the sensors, it's at least a couple $100. But the sensors last you for 3 months.
Okay, so it's not a one-time purchase. It's a 3-month supply for.
That's right.
So you could even run it just as a 3-month experiment and just.
That's right.
Yeah,
okay. I think that's the way to do it. Like I do it like kind of like what you said, like once a quarter per year, just to see where I'm at and if anything has changed. And it's a great little way to check in on your blood glucose levels and watch it as you eat different foods. And like you said, and you're absolutely right. I've had friends that have had this as well, because you get connected to the biohacking community and everybody's wearing one of these things. Yeah. And you could sit next to a friend and you both eat the same size banana, and one person's going to spike through the roof, the other person's going to chill out. And it's like, wow, it really is so dependent on the kind of microbiome you have, how quickly you break down these things, what happens when you do break them down. Like everybody is totally different.
Yeah, it's funny. At 51, I have never really, in spite of knowing, and this may come as a relief to a lot of people listening, in spite of knowing all that I do about health and well-being, I've never really bothered to do I've done a full panel through Wellness FX, but I've never really seen anyone or looked at how I can make changes to this, because I've always gotten away with, that's one of the curses of being athletic and physically fit and never having a health issue is I can get away with a lot of stuff. And when I turned 50, I started thinking a little bit differently. Like the thought this year was, well, I'm guessing that what got me to 50 is not going to get me to 100. And if that's the case, then what do I need to do differently? How do I need to change my behaviors in the second half of my life to help me get to 110 or however old I want to be before I go? And one of those things was paying attention to what's going on inside. And so it's a new thing. I just did this whole stool sample thing to find out what's going on in my gut, and I found out that I have a very low level of bacteria in my gut, first of all, and it's all of one type. I don't have a diverse flora in my gut. So now there's a naturopath that I'm seeing has recommended a few different types of probiotics, and we'll see. I don't, this is the very beginning for me, because I literally just started this about a month ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. Probiotics are a whole nother world. That's such an insane new area of research.
And it's a very difficult thing. You walk into a health store or even Whole Foods and you go down the aisle and God knows where you begin. I guess you could just start somewhere, but without testing, you don't know where to start, and you don't know where you are, and you don't know what effect it's having. And so it creates more questions than it does solve problems.
Yeah, it's really hard. And that's where I've kind of like tried to figure out that as well on the probiotic front. And where I came out on that was that I'd listened to, actually, my friend Rhonda Patrick, the researcher, she interviewed for her podcast a couple of the kind of leading Stanford scientists that are researching probiotic strains. And they have a book out about probiotics, and they're just kind of world-class scientists out of Stanford. And I believe they were the ones that told her about a company called VSL, and VSL was the brand that they recommended. And so I've been on that since. It's called VSL number 3, and it's not a brand that you find at Whole Foods. They don't sell them there.
Is it the kind of supplement that's like it lives inside a doctor's office, like it has to be connected to someone who is
it says it's medical food on the outside, and typically doctors prescribe it, but you can also get it directly from their website off prescription.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, that's just another example of like, I think that the thing that most people miss out on is they do walk down Whole Foods and they talk to the random person that works there and they say, hey, well, what should I get? And sometimes that can work. But I feel like for me, I've always been driven to like, again, back to that source, like who are the researchers that are studying this? And
Yeah.
even if you don't know them, like almost all universities list the email addresses of researchers that are out there. And you drop them a note and you say, hey, I know that you study the microbiome and probiotics more than anyone else. Like, what do you take at night? Just out of curiosity, and you'd be surprised how many of them will write back and be like, well, this isn't medical advice, but this is what I prefer based on the research that I've done. And they know more about the strands than you ever will, right?
Yeah.
And so you're getting right at the bleeding edge of the research, which is what I love to do.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. That's I would never have thought that you would necessarily get replies from people like that.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
refreshing that you can. That's cool.
Yeah, if you make it just really lightweight and just be like, hey, I'm not looking for medical advice, but I'm just curious what you take.
Yeah,
Because
right.
like a lot of these researchers are scared to say, hey, go do this. And then you do something, they end up in a lawsuit, blah, blah, blah. Nobody wants that. So that's the way I always kind of like phrase it to them.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I want to, I guess it's not really shifting. We're talking about the same kind of stuff, but your apps, Zero and Oak. How did you get started with the meditation, going down the meditation road? Was that part of this this tea? To me, those are linked. They might not be at all for you, but to me, tea and tea drinking and Zen and Buddhism and meditation are all connected. How is that for you?
Oh, they were certainly linked in terms of where I lived at the time. When I first got into meditation, I was living in San Francisco, and I was very lucky enough to randomly end up living in an apartment across the street from the San Francisco Zen Center.
Wow.
And so, and across the street from that place was a Samovar Tea Lounge. So there was a tea lounge and a Zen Center directly diagonal from each other. And I was like 4 doors down. And so I decided to, take a class there in Zen. And that's what kind of kickstarted this thing. And then I started playing around with the different meditation apps. And then I studied Transcendental Meditation as well, which is a form of mantra-based meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of like explored a few different disciplines, and it was in sitting and just finding a little bit of space and a little way to examine my own thoughts and on my own terms, in my own time, that I found a lot of benefit. And I understood, I was very lucky in that I understood and could feel the benefit of it pretty early on. Some people, it takes a few months before they start to notice little windows of benefit in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kind of got me interested in wanting to create a free resource for people to meditate more. And so the rationale behind creating Oak, my meditation app, was that there are some very great meditation apps out there, Headspace and Calm probably being my 2 favorite. But for me, I wanted something that, one, was teaching a little bit more of the traditional meditation techniques. So a lot of the meditation apps that are out there, and there's nothing wrong with this, but a lot of them are very prescriptive. So you come in and say, I have a fear of flying, I have anxiety, I have this or that. I kind of wanted more to teach you a technique and then just let you kind of like set you free and allow you just to practice it on your own. Like with the goal being to eventually graduate from a guided course into an unguided mode. Mm-hmm. So we have a pretty feature-packed unguided version, which is filled with different chimes which are audio cues to kind of bring your attention back.
Yeah, I like the Tin Roof Rainstorm.
Yeah.
I like there are 3 that I rotate between: the Tin Roof Rainstorm, the one that comes with it is called Energy, or it's the basic one.
The very first one, the one that kind of Elevate, yeah.
Elevate. And then there's one that I just discovered, the Om.
Yeah.
The Tibetan Om, I think is called.
Yeah.
Which I really like. I like all 3 of those.
Yeah. So those are, I found this amazing audio engineer. He's got his PhD, and there's 2 things that he does. One, he comes up with these kind of like beautiful, very relaxing tracks, which we have like 3 of them that are kind of like the Om ones that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that was really cool is when we picked the background sounds with like the rain roof, like the rain hitting the tin roof, that isn't synthesized. That is him with his microphone out in the wild, like capturing rain hitting a tin roof. And so when you hear our streams, our fireplace, our rain, any of that stuff, That's legit, real audio captured in the wild. And I love that because it's just like, you can, I don't know, but maybe it's because I know that they're real, but I feel like you can tell when they're synthesized. There's so many ways to make this stuff in software these days that I just wanted to have a really kind of like pure, truly recorded in nature series of sounds. So it's been nice to have those in the app.
How, one of the things, because I have a similar, a lot of things similar. I studied at the Santa Monica Zen Center for about 5 years. It no longer exists, but so I did a lot. I was never quite successful at translating what I learned at the Santa Monica Zen Center to a practice in my own life. And it's been, I would say it's only really been in the last 6 months that I've been successful at creating a regular habit. Like my longest oak streak is, I think, 10 days in a row.
Awesome.
And it's only 10 minutes, it's not a long time, but it's been a recent revelation to be able to do that and to want to do it, to actually want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the apps that actually helped me along that path is called Muse. I have it.
I have my Muse right here. Hold on, let me pull this out.
Yeah, exactly.
Right here.
The sensing headband. And do you use it very much today, or do you?
I'm fascinated with this idea of, well, let me back up real quick for 1 second. One of the things that first-time meditators have an issue with, and we know this from a lot of our data that we have at Oak, is that they don't know if they're doing it right.
Yes.
So a lot of people come in and they finish a 10-minute, they finish a 20-minute, and they're just like, okay, my mind was jumping around all over the place. I don't see a reason why to come back. So they don't know what does progress look like then, right? Especially if you've done 2 or 3 times and you're feeling the exact same way. So I think that one of the things that you'll see me really focus on with Oak going forward is a way to bring more of a sense of community to it so that you can get feedback from others on how you're doing, but also to work with a lot of different connected devices. Mm-hmm. So I met with the Aura folks. They actually came out to visit me, and I would love to tie in your heart rate data from the Aura Ring. And so they're so busy with this launch that they're not going to get to this stuff for another probably 3 months or so. But my hope is that by mid next year, when you launch Oak, like I wish Muse would open up a SDK for this. It would be amazing. But my hope would be that you could come in and say, I have an Apple Watch, or I have an Android watch, whatever it may be, connect to Oak, and then you could see heart rate variability, heart rate over time. Like the Aura Ring does breaths, it can actually capture breath data, like things like that, just so you have like a kind of North Star to point to and say, oh, I see from last session, yeah, my heart rate is a little bit more flat and a little bit lower, and I was able to get into a little bit more of a relaxed state. Like I'm trying to find things that we can point to that let you know when you're succeeding.
That you're doing it right.
Before you can feel the results, because the results will come with time. It's just getting people to that point to where they can finally start to feel the real results.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I think that if I look back over my experience and how I kind of let go of it and kind of quit doing it, I even with 6 years of Zen training, I didn't know that I necessarily was doing it right. Mm-hmm. And when left to my own devices, my brain was so, boo, 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 that I would very often come away from meditation sessions. First of all, I thought I had to do it for at least 20 or 25 minutes. I had all these rules around it that really didn't serve me. But I never really got the sense of knowing that I was doing it right when I wasn't at the Zen Center. And so that's why I dropped off. But Muse was really helpful in reestablishing that connection. One of the things I really like in their app that I just wanted to ask you, I wondered if you had made a conscious choice not to do this, but they have a daily tracker. Like it tells you, okay, yesterday you did 10 minutes and the day before you did 8 minutes, and it graphs it out over time. And Oak doesn't do that. And I wondered was that a conscious choice to not have that in there, or is that something you're planning on adding to it?
Certainly we've had some requests for people wanting kind of like a more of a monthly view to see like how they've done, so they can look and say, oh, I
did 20 days out of 30 days or something. Or,
So our first step in that direction is like what you said earlier, the streaks. So you get streaks are consecutive days of meditation or breathing. And so, that was our first. I have the tricky thing is, and this is like when you do software development, it's always difficult, is you have a list of probably 15 features that you want to build. And then you have one engineer. And so it's like, okay, how do we stack rank this and pick the 2 or 3 things that we need to build right now?
We're going through the same thing in the Whole Life Challenge. I mean, it's just start. That's
it's just like
a daily conversation. And our list is like 100 things.
Yeah, it's tough. Mine's definitely longer than I let on. But yeah, I definitely, I hear you. I want to make it very apparent and give you ways to look at your data and understand how you've been successful. But yeah, that's certainly something that we've talked about.
Cool.
I need to hire another engineer. I think that's to add the 2 engineers. I think is a good place to be.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask you too about transcendental meditation, because it's something that I never, it's kind of like $1,000 gets you the key to the club and enlightenment. I mean, I don't know. I make fun of that, like not just in a fun way. Like, really, I need a mantra, and
It's more than that. It's 1,500, I think.
Oh, it is. I thought it was 1,000. I thought it was 1,000. Price has gone up. How useful was that for you in your meditation journey, and how did you incorporate that into your own practice?
Yeah, well, this is really interesting. I'm glad you brought it up. This is a great thing to talk about. So Transcendental Meditation is essentially mantra meditation. They definitely were not the organization to invent mantra-based meditation. Like mantra meditation it's been around for many more years since they came out with this method here just not too long ago. So mantra meditation is very powerful. Like I can see why they have been so successful, because when you go in and you practice mantra meditation and you have this phrase that you're repeating internally in your head over and over again, you get into a very kind of rhythmic, like breathing, kind of like the repetition of the word just puts you into this deep state. It's almost like hypnosis in a way. It's fascinating because I had never experienced that before when meditating, like to get there that quickly, like within 10 minutes, I was in this amazing state.
Wow.
So I found it really powerful. The issue that I had was, well, there's a couple things. I'd watched this documentary on Transcendental Meditation called, I think it's David Wants to Fly. Yeah, David Wants to Fly. And it's been banned in the United States. They tried to get it in, but there was all these lawsuits that were threatened against him.
How did you watch it?
I found a copy of it on eBay, and then I bought a DVD player, and I ripped it off the DVD player, and then I had the.
You really wanted to watch it.
Well, because it was talking about the insides and like the drama behind what goes on behind the scenes at Transcendental Meditation, and the organization itself. And I had always got I wouldn't call them like. I'm always scared of things that seem like culty in a way.
Yeah.
And those always concern me. And I didn't get that, but I got hints of that with them. Like when you go into train for the first time, they take you into your own private room and they say these sacred words to this picture of this dead prophet there. And they are not prophet, but they're guru. Mm-hmm. And then they have like it's very traditional in that sense. Mm-hmm. And then they tell you a secret word that is your mantra that cannot be told to anyone else. And if you Google it later and you look it up, it's just based on your year of birth. And so everyone gets the same secret word based on the year of birth. And I actually was able to match mine straight up.
Anybody else that does TM that is you're born your year and has your same secret word?
Yeah. Actually, I know one of my buddies has the exact same secret word.
Wow.
And I told it to him and we were laughing about it. But the thing that you mentioned it earlier is I will say this about I went there for the 3-day course. I learned a lot. They give you a lot of insights as to when you run into certain pitfalls when you're doing mantra-based meditation. Like let's say, for example, you're doing a mantra and all of a sudden the mantra starts to sync up with your heart rate and you can feel your heart rate with your mantra. What do? Like, how do you, so there was a lot of like these little situations where they help you navigate when you're getting started. Mm-hmm. So I will say that for me, it was worthwhile. Like I got a lot out of it. And I thought it was great. I didn't go to all the follow-up meetings and the things that they want to pull you into and the deeper way to spend more money with them. Yeah. I was like, I learned, like, peace out, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that was that I took away from it was that this is a very powerful form of meditation, and more people should have access to it that shouldn't be required to spend $1,200 because it's so simple. It's
Yeah.
like repeating a word and then a handful of things to avoid, pitfalls to avoid. So anyway, long story short, I worked with someone, her name is Dr. Patricia Carrington, who has developed this form of mantra-based, non-religious mantra-based meditation. And she studied this at Princeton, actually did a few different research papers on different mantras with students, and the studies that she did back in the, I think back in the 80s or 90s. So she's been doing this for a long time. And so she licensed me her mantra-based course, which is about 5 hours of material. And she covers all of the pitfalls and all the things you run into and how to get started with your own mantra practice. And it's really awesome content. So I went and licensed that from her. I'm going to include it in the app completely for free. And that'll roll out sometime in the next, I'd say probably month and a half.
I was going to ask you, is the loving kindness meditation similar to a mantra based? Because it has you repeat that.
Yeah, it is in a way. It is in a way. Mantra is very specific, one word kind of going over. The loving kindness is more intention based, like you're wishing this for yourself or others, like goodwill for yourself or others. Mantra or metta meditation, which is the technical term for loving kindness, has been around since about 400 BC. So it's been around for a really long time. It's technically a different form, a different discipline. But yeah, I think they're both really, really awesome. So I'm excited to roll that course out because I like with all these forms of meditation, the reason I don't charge for any parts of the Oak app is I feel like this stuff is like you record an MP3. Like, why should I be charging for an MP3 that just gets played over and over again? Like, why not just give it away? Like, this is all information that we didn't invent. Like, let's just set it free and see how many people we can get using it.
It's really cool that you have the resources and time and desire to make it open and available. Like, I really love that. And thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that for me, I have like 3 people more or less working on this full time. And eventually I would like to figure out ways that we can just get to break even, but it won't be for charging for courses. I think I'll probably do something along the lines of more of a donation model, pay what you can afford. I had this idea where I was like, okay, what if we just charge like a really inexpensive fee for certain kind of social features. And then if you meditate a certain amount of times per month, it's just completely free. So I'm trying to figure out like, maybe like the encouragement is like you get a completely free app as long as you meditate like, 10 times a month or something. There's something fun about that.
That just reminded me of a model that I wanted to, I wasn't ever really serious about trying it, but I thought it would be really interesting. Like, cause I owned a gym I owned CrossFit Los Angeles for 13 years. And I always thought, well, what if you charge, $1,000 a month, some ridiculously high number. And for each visit based over the course of the month, you got an amount taken off of that payment. So that by the end of the month, if you came, I don't know, 25 times, you wouldn't have to necessarily, it wouldn't measure how hard you went. It wouldn't measure, it would just measure showing up. And if you showed up, say 25 times over the course of the month, it was free. And, there's a fear in that, fuck, I might go out of business because I'll make money. But
it's a crazy social experiment that's probably worth doing.
It would be really, really cool to see how that model played out. If I had, unlimited resources and that wasn't my primary source of business, I might have tried it.
Yeah, something like that could be really cool. That's what I was thinking as well. Is like, is there a model that we can do here that's just completely different? That isn't about. I feel that we as like modern humans, we have so many different services that we pay for these days. Whether, it be our Netflix or HBO or gym membership, or it's like, I just don't want to feel as like it's just like one more service unless we can add a ton of value in some way.
Right.
I don't know. I'm still thinking through it, but yeah, the idea is that the kind of MP3 based course stuff will always be free. For
that's really cool. So I want to shift gears into your other app. How are you on time? We've been going for an hour.
Oh, you know what? I do have to run soon. So probably another 10, 15 minutes would be great.
Okay, cool. What is your other app? Now, I haven't really played with your other app. It's called Zero, right?
That's right.
And That's intermittent fast, or is it fasting, intermittent fasting,
Yeah,
or?
I mean, you can choose any type of fast that you want to do on there. So the idea is that I had just kind of like with oak, in the sense that I'd been doing this type of practice. I wanted to build something for myself that I thought would be useful, and so I built an app that allows you to track your fasting. Some people use it for intermittent fasting. Some people use it for religious fasting. Some people use it for multi-day fast. Like there's a whole slew of different use cases out there. But I would say that the trend that has been happening over the last couple of years has been this idea of doing these 16-hour fasts, where you have your last bite of food just before you go, as you finish dinner, and then you don't eat again until around noon the next day. And
It's what I do actually. So
yeah. I mean,
I put butter in my, actually I'm starting now with ghee. So I do ghee and coconut oil in my coffee.
Yeah.
Which I know I listen to Dr. Rhonda Patrick too, probably not as often. I haven't, I'm not a zealot podcast. There's so many freaking podcasts to listen
There
to.
are.
Such a hard time, like figuring out, I only have so many hours in a day. And I've been on a Jordan Peterson binge watching, streak here. So I've let other things slide. But she talks about how even fat will knock you, that doesn't matter, caffeine or whatever.
Right.
So, but I need it in the morning. So for now.
Yeah, I hear you. It's hard. I don't do it all the time, but when I'm about to do another 5-day fast this Sunday. So I do that once a quarter. That's kind of my go-to thing. Yeah, but the app, like with Zero, it's just like a really simple, like 3-screen app.
Does it give you advice on how to do it, or does it just let you track?
It gives you like one of 3 different ways when you come in. You can set up your own custom, or you can say, I want to do 16-hour, I want to do a 5-2. You can kind of define what you want to do there. But it's crazy that this fasting movement, how big it's gotten recently. We've had, gosh, I want to say probably like 10 or so million fasts that have happened in the app since it started. So it's been nuts watching that grow. And a buddy of mine has actually helped me out with developing it now. And he used fasting in conjunction with his chemotherapy treatment. And that was really helpful for him getting into remission. And so he's a big believer and a great product guy. So I have him helping me out, which is great, because that product really continues to grow.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, it's probably something I will check out. I just haven't yet. It's just one of those other things that are right outside the circle of things.
I have a list of those as well.
Just a couple more things. I wanted to ask you, this is just a silly question. How did it go learning the splits? Did you get
I'm still working on it.
So 4 weeks did not happen.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've seen, I put a couple of Instagram videos up. I actually have a machine that helps you do the splits now.
Is it the one that you crank and you?
The old school, like
from the gymnastics. It used to be in the gymnastics gym I trained in.
Yeah, exactly. So I have one of those now, and that's like, I'm just like cranking that wheel, and it's like pushing my legs further and further out every day. My thinking initially was like, oh, I'll just go in there, spend 5 minutes every day, and I'll just like pick up a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch every day. And it's like, no, after like 4 or 5 days, my legs are like, yeah, we're not going another 1/2 inch.
Yeah. I mean, you get to a point with the splits. I mean, I've had a similar intention, is to be able to do the splits, and I've tried, I don't know, I probably started some sort of a stretching routine 5 times in order to do that. And I've given up each time because I just don't see enough progress to make it feel.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I'm having now is that I took yesterday off because I'm in pain. It's like my muscles are like hurting after doing these stretching. And so it's a big deal. I think you have to, I don't want to injure myself. That would, I mean, what would it be to like pull your groin and like be injured? So off of something that's so stupid as wanting to do the splits.
Right.
So I'm taking it slow, but I'm still working on it.
Is it a Chinese split, or is it I don't know what they call the front to back split? Are you working on the one that's like sides?
The Jean-Claude Van Damme.
The Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yes, I love it. Yeah, that image of him jumping up on the countertops with his legs. It's just,
of course. Every kids watching that, it was so great. You're like, wow, that dude's amazing.
What so many more questions I could ask. What if you had to choose something in your routine, and you had to get rid of everything else, and you could keep one, maybe 2 things that are really like full on essentials to your life being full and fulfilled. And I know you have I wanted to get into stuff with your family life now that you have a baby, but we, obviously we have an hour and 15 minutes, so not enough time. But what would those things be?
That's a good question. I think certainly nature has been a big piece of what I've been enjoying lately. So just trying to find some time to get outside, and I combine that with kind of like either seated or walking meditation, but just trying to find some space that way, and just like really just observing and watching not only the trees, but just using that time outside to also observe my breath, and do little mini meditations. That's been huge. In Japan, they call it forest bathing, where they plan these trips out into the forest, and they've shown that it reduces cortisol levels and different stress hormones in the body. Just that's not even meditating. That's just the act of being in nature. And
you can be talking, you can be hanging out with your family.
Yeah, just going for a walk with some friends, things like that. And so we're up here this summer in Portland, Oregon. So just hanging out, doing lots of walks in the trees and enjoying that. I think that's been really key. The other thing in terms of just overall just feeling amazing, certainly the sauna. I mean, the sauna is such a great substitute for alcohol at night.
Wow.
Going in, and they have these little tiny sauna tents. If you don't have a sauna at home and you're like, how does this apply to me? Yep. They have these little tents that you can buy on Amazon. They're like $200. They're infrared. They go around your neck, and you sit in a chair, and you're fully enclosed. Uh-huh. And you can do a little mini sauna like that and really get into a good sweat, and come out of that feeling pretty euphoric and ready for a good night's sleep. So definitely there are so many health benefits that come with the sauna. You should check out, again, Rhonda Patrick. I keep plugging her. She owes me a smoothie or something.
I need to have a podcast.
Maybe you should.
Maybe you can introduce me to her.
Yeah. She would be a great person to have on the podcast. But just her report on sauna usage, where she pulls all the different published papers together and does a video report on it.
I can't remember. Is she a proponent of the infrared, the near infrared, or the heat, the barrel sauna style?
I know that she's done both, but she is a fan of getting all the studies that show the increases in longevity, reduced dementia, and reduced cardiovascular events have pointed to 20 minutes a day, minimum of 3 days a week, a maximum of a full week long, with the effects getting even more intense the more you do it. At 170 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you can get to 170 for 20 minutes a day, that's where you want to be.
Whether it's infrared or not, however you can do
that's
that.
Right. Honestly, a lot of people now are starting to use really, really hot baths as well.
Wow.
Same idea, right? You're just like heating the outside of the body, go up to your neck in really hot water and sit in there for 20 minutes.
That seems hot. 170 degree water. I've never measured my bath.
I don't know that you would be able to do it at that temperature. I'd be curious.
By that's what you percolate green tea at, right? 170,
175.
175
green, 185 oolong, and
that's hot. I can't drink it at 175.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly hot, and I know that obviously full contact water on the skin surface is going to be a lot more intense than, say, sitting in a sauna.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. I would never have guessed you would say that. The sauna, if you're going to choose two things, being in nature and then being in the sauna. I mean, I don't know what I did think you would say, but those two wouldn't have come to mind. So that's
cool. Those are for me in terms of just the general overall happiness. Like obviously time spent with my daughter is number one, and with my wife, and like I'm talking about things that you can do kind of independently, a family that are just like going to make you feel amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Gosh, what a fantastic conversation. And I just appreciate everything that you do. And your, like I said at the beginning, your transparency and willingness to share all that you've learned, your adventures, and the way you kind of go about doing your life. I think it's just, it's really, really cool. And it gives people something to, even if they get, a little bit of the comet dust from your tail, they can benefit from that.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, the way I look at it is like, we're all making mistakes, and life is just this whole series of learning, and learning is just admitting that you've made a mistake, right? That's how you learn. And like, you can either be in a shell and unhappy, or you could try your hand at a whole slew of different things, whether it's language learning or biohacking. And some of it's going to stick, some of it won't, but it's so much fun. Like, it's an adventure, as you said.
Yeah.
So that's what I kind of like to hopefully encourage people to do, is just to go out and have fun with their life and not take it so seriously. So many people beat themselves up internally over just trying to achieve something, or, you know, and it's, I don't know. I used to think that way too. When I was in my startup mentality, I was like, I gotta be successful. I gotta go out and create this $1 billion business, and all that has shifted for me. I feel like I just kind of, I have friends that, you know, have 20, 30, $50 million that are trying to become billionaires. And you're thinking like, wow, it just doesn't stop, does it? It just like, there's always another level. There's always another level. And chasing that elusive thing that doesn't mean anything. It just literally, it is like printed HTML on a bank login that shows you a few extra zeros at the end. You know, it's like, don't get me wrong. I think that it's really important that we try to get to a comfortable life, because, you know, living in poverty and living without having to worry about where your food is coming from is not a good place to be in. So I'm all for getting out of that state, but I just like think that chasing these other things, time is better spent on focusing on yourself and just really enjoying the life that you have.
It's a question of enough. What's enough?
Right. Exactly.
And what is
Exactly.
success? And I think if you don't spend time with those questions, life pulls you by the tail.
Yeah. And I've realized that for me, enough is rain hitting me in the face and hanging out with my Labradoodle and my family. Like, that's where it's at.
That's cool. Well, thanks again. I'm gonna end the live here. Just hang on one second, and here we go.